I think that you'll find the information that Mr. Hawkins is going to be presenting very captivating, very inspiring, and very thoughtful. George recently retired from his position as CEO and General Manager of the District of Columbia Water and Sewer Authority. He has subsequently, he's just retired 3 weeks ago, he's just started a company called Moonshot, and he will explain to you the meaning of the word moonshot and why he named his company Moonshot. I had the good fortune, as have a number of you in this room, I believe, heard Mr. Hawkins speak before. When I first heard him speak, it was, here's a guy from one of the largest water utilities and wastewater utilities in the nation. And as a utility director, I was listening to the problems, the solutions, the challenges, the complaints, and on and on and on that we receive as utility directors. And I thought, isn't this interesting that regardless of the size of the agency, that some of the issues that we face are very, very common. And as such, when the opportunity presented itself to ask George to be our keynote speaker, I thought that the message would be very, very useful to all of us. Like they say in the newspaper, I stepped on the lead. Thank you for being here. My name is Bob Lux. I am the Vice President of Montgomery County Utility District number 60, and I'm also the Gulf Coast Trustee to the AWBD. With that said, I'm going to let Mr. Hawkins take over because his bio is in the journal as well as I believe in the program notebook. You can get all the particulars in there, but I'm confident that you'll not only be entertained, but also you'll come away with some very, very worthwhile messages that you can bring home. George?
I got the call on the bat phone. Don't we all have a bat phone? In the water business, you're never off the job. And it was a weekend morning, Saturday. How come so many of the problems we face happen on Friday nights and weekend? But it was a Saturday morning, and I answered the phone for a water main break in our fair city, Washington, D.C. At the time, I lived in a basement apartment, a English basement apartment. If you know what an English basement apartment is? I didn't. Well, I'll tell you what an English basement apartment is. An English basement apartment means that when you run in, that you have a little window out to the street. So it's not a completely submerged basement. I did not know that. Well, I was glad to have an English basement apartment, other than the fact I was very attuned to the shoes that people wear. Because when I'd wake up in the morning, I'd just look out the window and know what the weather was. Get ready for the day. Well, I got up this morning, had to call on the bat phone, water main break, look out the window and see nothing but white. Well, that was the Saturday morning of snowpocalypse. We all have the same kind of challenges sometimes with water, but I suspect you don't have as many of these in Texas. We don't even have many of these in D.C. But snowpocalypse, we had gotten about 3 feet of snow. And we had a water main break, and my first challenge was just opening my door. Because I was in a basement, the snow had piled up, and I had to push the door open to get up the stairs, walk out to 9th Street, and go straight up. The city was completely deserted. Looked like an apocalypse movie or something. There was nobody out, no vehicles, nothing plowed. I got on my boots and my work stuff, and I went out to 9th Street, a main thoroughfare in D.C., and I walked up the middle of the road because the wind had just blown it so it wasn't quite as deep. Literally walking through Washington, D.C. with nobody out. But fortunately, I could walk to the Bryant Street station, which is where our drinking water folks roll from. And we knew weather was coming in, and I suppose, I'm sure you do, we shelter folks in place when we know there's something like that so we can get our personnel to whatever happens, and our pump stations and all the rest work 24 hours a day, so we always have people on staff. So I trudged up to Bryant Street. We had to get a crew across town, New Hampshire. Now, you all wouldn't know this, but this is farther west in D.C., right in the district that's international, right near the World Bank. And we had to get across because the water main break was spilling water onto New Hampshire Ave, another main thoroughfare in D.C. It was all turning to ice when it would come to the surface. So we had to get the water off. All the buildings, including several hotels, were out of water because of the break. Temperature change, as we all know, is what causes most of our water main breaks. D.C. Water's had 140 water main breaks in the last 2 months. We've been as low as 0 degrees, and we've been as high as 70 degrees over the last, just going like this, which is a killer for water and pipes. So we put our own flotilla together. We have trucks, we have plows, we have all of our vehicles. I walked, because I got across town faster than the flotilla did, because they had to organize all the trucks, and we plowed our way across the town. I walked down the street to get there, made it to the water main break. The trucks were just rolling up as I was standing there. And at least in the city, you all have seen water main breaks, maybe not quite as many as we have in D.C., given the age of our system. But what happens in a very heavily built-up area where there's a water main break is the water's pouring out underground, high-pressure system, and it's all seeking the surface from wherever it can get there. And most of the surface is hard. It's the asphalt on the street. It's the sidewalk. It's a building. So the only places the water can get through so that pressure can be released out into the surface is everywhere where there's a hole in the concrete. And where there are holes are street signs. And so water was shooting up all over the place. It was like a water park in Disney in winter for penguins. I don't know what it was for, but there was water shooting up all over the place. Here, there, everywhere. It would shoot up, splurt around, come down, hit the ground, and turn into ice. I was like, oh, good God, what a mess. I'd only been on the job 3 months. I wore, up till 3 weeks ago, I wore work boots every day. I wore a work shirt, looked like as my kids would say, looked like I worked in a gas station. Had a patch, my name on, in case I forget, my name stitched on the shirt. And so I'm standing out there, the trucks roll up, and I'm like, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, Mr. Hawkins, we got to get the water off first. I'm like, oh, of course. You got to get the water off to dig up the ground, fix the pipe. Well, that means us finding the valves. I never thought about that. People outside of industry never thought about that. You know, in Washington, D.C., we have 43,000 water valves. I was like, why do you have 43,000 water valves? Well, if a water main breaks on a street, and you've got to turn the water off so you can dig into the street, take out the piece, put in a new one, you want to take out as few customers as possible, which means getting the valves as close to the break as you can have. And the more valves you have, the more detailed or specific the shutoff can be. But then, of course, every pipe we try to supply from more than one place to have redundancy in the system. So it's more than one valve you got to turn off. And first they open up the fire hydrant to start bleeding out the water that's left in the system. So they're turning fire hydrants, more water spurting in, and they have to dig into the snow. And they're like, well, how do you know where the valves are? So I get into the general foreman's truck with him, and he pulls out this big old book. And he puts it on the front seat, and he opens it up, and there's coffee stains, and the pages are ripped. I mean, this must be the key book they've been using forever in the truck. And it shows all the city streets with the valves and the fire hydrants and the pipes and where they were. And I was like looking at the thing. I'm like, that's what you use? And he's going, yeah, we've been using this. I think I had this book in the truck, like so many of the people in our industry, veteran person doing this. Probably last 20 years I've been using this book. Thinking to myself, 20 years, what if they like changed the system in the last one or added something new? But I didn't ask. So he's looking through and he's, okay, and they were digging the holes, and it's sort of cool. I hadn't seen this either. When they're turning off the valves, it's these two guys. By the way, they were working with some of them without gloves on. The toughness of the people in the water industry boggles my mind. But here they are standing, and they stand across from each other, and it's like a little dance because they're pushing the valve key as they're turning this thing to physically turn and close off the valve while the water is pouring. Imagine turning off the valve at its highest flow rate because the water is pounding through that pipe because it's flirting all up in the air. Usually there's not that much flow through in any pipe otherwise. So they're turning off this thing when the flood is happening to get it off. And I see them here, up, down the street, around the corner. They turn off all the valves. Water's not off. So I'm sitting in the truck, and by the way, I'd gotten out, and I was looking around, and there's hotels around us. There was a World Bank conference going on at the time, and I had all these people standing in the reception areas of the hotel peeking out the window. In all sorts of garb, by the way. Foreign garb. It was all very colorful, but I was like, they're all looking at us. And the guy said, yeah, they always do. I said, well, because their water's off. You're in a hotel and you woke up and your shower doesn't work, the toilet doesn't work, the restaurant's not serving. They're going to be watching us. I'm like, well, who talks to them to tell them what's going on? And the sheriff foreman looks at me and says, aren't you? I'm like, well, what am I going to tell them? And they said, well, we're working on it. Well, I said, they can see that. But it turns out, having turned every valve that was on that old coffee-stained book in the general foreman's truck, without the water off, finally we called back to Bryan Street. That was where we had rolled from. We had Kurt, who had been with the water department for 42 years and had a memory like a steel trap. He goes, oh, I remember. You go up 22nd Street, take a left. This is sort of like how we used to play football. Go up, take a left at the corner, and by the car, I'll throw it to you. He goes, go up left. There's a little thing there. Take a left. About halfway down, there's another valve there. We just put it in because that building just went up. We were like, and that was, I remember thinking, oh my God, the city's growing like crazy right now. There must be thousands of things that have been added that aren't on these books. So we went around the corner, turned off the valve, and poof, the water went off. But I remember as I sat there and thinking, oh God, what have I done? Why have I taken this job? Because at the time, this was 2009, I felt that there was a fist coming at me as the new CEO of DC Water. A fist with 5 points on it. It's a fist that I think in some fashion or another, every one of your enterprises is facing in a similar fashion, because the 5 points are not unique to DC Water at all. Scale is a bit different kind of city. DC's got a very old system, but it's the same fist. And it scared the bejeebus out of me. I'm not actually sure what that is. I just heard that phrase. I was just panicked. I was totally panicked. And what's the fist? First on the fist is we have the most important service known to humankind in our responsibility. People ask me, Mr. Hawkins, how many jobs do you support at DC Water? They're probably thinking of my staff, which is about 1,200. Or they're thinking about our contractors, about 6,000. I'm like, oh, no. How many jobs do we support? All of them. You can't get a certificate of occupancy in D.C. I suspect that's true here in Texas. This building would have to close if they don't have water, fire suppression, and wastewater. That is necessary before you open your doors to a home or business. All of them. Without us, no job is possible. Every job depends on us. That's extraordinary. Then people ask me, Mr. Hawkins, how many lives do you support? And they're probably thinking about the several million people we serve of one fashion or another. Actually, it's way more than that. But millions of people we serve in the D.C. area. And I'm like, oh, no. All of them. When NASA looks for life in the universe, you know what they look for first? Water. It's the only element essential to every living organism. There's aerobic and non-aerobic and this, that, and the other. All of them need water. Every one of them. We're the top of the food chain, so we're, of course, dependent on all the rest of them. But we have the service that delivers the fundamental attribute of modern society. Every single job, every single life form depends on us. It still boggles my mind every time I think about that. That's amazing what we do. And why is it on the fist? That's a cool thing. By the way, I have a hand coming. It was positive. I'll be all depressing here for a while. Good stuff's coming. But this was the fist I was feeling in 2009. Why is that on the fist? Because of the second point of the fist, which is our systems. And when I say our, I suspect you have some of these challenges in Texas, but I'll just talk about DC water for now, not cast any aspersions on your systems. DC water system is and was a mess. The American Society of Civil Engineers graded wastewater systems in the United States and gave it a D. A D. I think they gave DC a D. They grade particular regions as well. And you know, I teach a class at Princeton. I gave a student an F one year. You know what happens when you give someone an F? The teacher has to write a special report. Is that right? A student gets an F and the teacher has more work to do? I was so irritated by that. That was like that F student who's the worst thing I've ever had, kicking me in the teeth for being an F student. So I don't give Fs anymore. I give Ds. Message deliver, no special report. So I always wondered, did the American Societies of Civil Engineers say, well, if we give them an F, they can't get worse? So we'll give them a D. That gets the message. But think on that. The most essential, every job, everything. Just, good Lord, the world survives on us, and we have a D in that? How can that be? In Washington, D.C., the median age of a water main. Now, you all are more mathematical than I am, but I'm told by my ex-team that median means half of the pipes are older and half are younger. So half median. Washington, D.C., drinking water pipes, 79 years. We had a water main break on MacArthur Boulevard 2.5 months ago. Big main thoroughfare, flooded a school, all sorts of horrible things, just like that, the story I was telling you. I got to site. I was actually in Boston when I got the bat phone call, got to a plane, flew back, got on site, always go to site for the big water main breaks. That water main, when we dug up the street, had Captain Miggs stamped on the side of it. Apparently the engineers who worked on these things would stamp their names on the cast iron pipe that was in the ground. 48-inch transmission main, big one. Captain Miggs became famous in the Civil War as the quartermaster general after he put this pipe in the ground in 1856. And we still have it in operation in our fair city. You know, ironically, we dig up the street, we got this 1846 pipe, you got to put in the new piece. Well, the new piece doesn't look exactly the same diameter as the old piece, so you need the coupling to connect it to the old stuff. We had one coupling that would fit an 1846 pipe, so we sent out a question on something called WARN. Some of you may be part of it. It's sort of a water network to get stuff. We sent out the message in WARN. The only city that had a coupling that would fit an 1846 pipe was Boston. Because they're an old city like we are. So they ship it down overnight. We get that friggin' pipe fixed. But we have an old, beat-up system. And the sewers are older and deeper and bigger. Our big sewers were put in the 1800s as well. You know, by the way, why? Interesting story. You'd all love this book, by the way. You ever heard of the book Ghost Map? I encourage you to read it. It's short. It's a fun read. It's a scary read. The Ghost Map is the story of the gentleman who determined that cholera was caused by water. John Snow was his name. It's like the show or the book. And he was mapping in London in the 1850s. Cholera would kill people by the tens of thousands back then. It was one of the most deadly illnesses in any major city across the world. And at the time, cities, the first chapter of the Ghost Map is what London was like in the 1850s. Oh, good God, there was poo and dog and horse manure everywhere. Basements, streets. Do you know that the woman's high heel was originally invented to lift their feet out of the poo in the street? Well, the air was so bad that everyone thought you got cholera from what they called miasma. That's what they called the air. It was so horrible. For the House of Commons, they would take sheets and put chlorine on it so it would change the air blowing in off the Thames, which was horrific because it was filled with everybody's carcasses, poo, just, oh God. But John Snow was like, why is it that there's a lot of cholera on this street, but not on the street next to it if it's caused by the air? So he did GIS map in the old-fashioned way. He walked around with a map and a pen, and he started charting where the illnesses were, putting his own health at risk. He followed one particular outbreak to a particular water source, and he found that it was contaminated by nearby waste, essentially just where they were dumping waste until it would be taken out by night soil people who would come in the evening, a whole business to get rid of it every night. And he said, it's caused by water. He was vilified by the public health establishment. But my guess is, just like you all, he let the facts do the talking. He stuck to what he thought was the right answer, not political answer, the right answer, and he eventually prevailed. Incredible story. So we all know that more children and more people have died from waterborne illnesses than almost any other kind of affliction known to humankind. And that's when big sewers started to get built. 1850s, 1860s. When does D.C. grow as a city? In the Civil War, 1860s. That's why we have one of the oldest sewer systems in the United States, because our city was growing. Wars always make capital cities grow, right when sewers were determined to be the most important public. So I got sewers that are really old. So this is incredibly important. Terrible condition. Third, so we got a terrible situation on an essential service, and guess what? On top of that, people don't know us. Or if they do, they don't really like us. This reality was brought home to me. I did have a tendency to go all the big water main breaks. It's my job. I'll go, I want to see what's going on. I want to carry the flag. My training is talking to people, so when the news shows up or the neighbors, that's what I do. I'd gone to a water main break on a Friday night. Adams Morgan, big entertainment district in the city. I lived not nearby, so I was walking home wearing my uniform with the patch on my shoulder. And someone walked up to me in the street, tapped me, and says, sure, I've always wanted to work for you. I'm like, great. What are you interested in doing? And he goes, I'll never forget this. He goes, I've always wanted to work for the Department of Corrections. That was like a Twilight Zone time warp thing. I'm like, what? I've had interactions with law enforcement before, but not quite at being one. And that got me to thinking, why on earth did this fellow, looking at my patch on my coat, think I worked for the Department of Corrections? There's two enormous messages there. First, maybe I sort of look like a law enforcement officer. I don't think that's a bad thing. But second, our logo, D.C. Water and Sewer Authority, was all on this little tiny patch, which of course you can't read. Our tagline was 2 sentences on a patch that big. Of course you can't read. It had a Capitol dome. It was red, white, and blue, like all D.C. cat patches. And it had a hand. This was meant to be a good thing. The theory was good. A hand reaching out over water. And I realized from a distance, it looked like 2 hands in a handcuff. That's my guess. But the reality of that is that most people, when they get up in the morning and they go into their bathroom and they turn on the spigot and clean water comes out, the miracle of modern civilization. More lives have been saved because of that reality, which you all are part of, than any other single step. More than penicillin, more than anything, is clean water at the tap 24 hours a day, and they have no idea where it comes from and no idea what it takes to deliver it. Then they use that water for whatever they use it for. It goes down the drain into a wastewater system. Some of the most complex systems we build. No idea where it goes or what happens to it. No idea. We had 670 trucks in our fleet with this logo on it that looked like we had prisoners working on all over the city. Nobody knew who we were. Or if they did, it was only because of something had gone wrong. Because at least at my agency, in the old days, And this was sort of a virtue. I understand it and I love it, even though I don't quite agree with it. It was a virtue not to be in the news. We're so good at what we do. Think how good we are. This miracle comes in everybody's house, and we're so good at this, people don't even know we're doing it. That means we're really good at it. And it goes down the drain, they don't even know what we do with that either, because we're so good at it. And so the only time we're in the news is if there's a water main break or a sewer backup or a flood hits and a big storm. That's bad news. So ergo, let's not be in the news. Let's keep our heads down. Do the work. That is a virtue, by the way. I love employees who just keep their head down and do the work. Except if your customers don't know you or what you do, or how hard it is, why are they going to pay more for it? Or pay anything for it? If it looks like it just happens, I always hear these, this goes to the next point 4 on the fist. There it is, that people didn't know us in D.C. at all. Or if they did, they didn't like us, because the only time we were in the news was a water main break, sewer backup, flood, or in our case, in the 2000s, a lead and water crisis. We got in the news a lot then. I went back and looked I just did a search for DC WASA, as we were known, and all the message, all the news was bad. There was not a single positive story. And a lot of it was front page Washington Post for the lead problem. That was big news. So we either have people who don't know us at all, or if they've heard anything about us, it was a bad story. As opposed to the miracle we deliver to them every day, 24 hours a day. Which leads to the 4th, which is we didn't have anywhere near enough money. That week after the water main break in the winter with the snow and me going, oh God, what's going on? I remember my CFO came in, we sat down in my office and he pulls out the big charts. He said, I didn't want to tell you this before you took the job. I'm like, that is not a phrase you want to hear when you walk into a job. He says, but I got to show you our budget. 2009 capital spending, $200 million. A lot of money. I was already worried about that. 2010, it was scheduled to go up to, according to him, $300 million. 2011, $400 million. 2012, $500 million. 2013, $550. 2014, $650. Tripling the capital budget over a period of time. I was like, are you kidding me? I've got to raise $100 million a year or more than, good Lord, it's a new phone. One thing about changing jobs, you get new stuff, don't know how to use it. People call me now, no one answers. Have an IT problem, no one there to fix it. Good Lord, being on your own, hard. But anyways, I was speechless. How is it that we got this essential service in terrible shape, nobody knows us, and we're going to ask them for hundreds of millions of dollars more? Then I got all the surveys. You all heard them. People don't want to pay more for water. I'm like, well, of course. If you called me and asked me, do I want to pay more for that, or for a candy, or for my shoes, or for a cup of coffee, what's my answer going to be? No. Who of us, other than, I don't know, none of us, are going to say, yeah, I want to pay more for that? Nobody is going to answer the question, do I want to pay more for something, with yes, unless they're crazy. Unless you have a connection to them and can make a value proposition which they understand. I am absolutely willing to invest money in things that matter to me and that I understand. But that means I have a value. Am I willing to invest money in college for my kids? Yeah, painful. But I know why I'm doing it, so I do it. Why would anyone pay more for water? They don't know who the company is. They don't know what we do. They know why for that. Makes no sense to me. And last on the fist, and I'm getting to the good part, is how everything I heard about our industry is that we are conservative. I don't mean conservative politically. I mean conservative like doing the same things. Not very open to creativity and innovation. Hear it all the time. Still do. By the way, I think there's some truth to that, but for the right reason. Any of us, including me at DC Water, you've got a system to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can't be wrong. You've got a very tight and fixed budget. Why do I use the technology I've always used? Because I know it works. Do you remember Coke? I was doing this presentation once, and the whole group from Coke was in the crowd. And they came up to me afterwards and sort of were irritated because I using them as an example. But we in this room probably remember when Coke went to New Coke. And it totally flopped. None of us liked New Coke. Well, New Coke was a flop, but Coke turned in, this is the wrong analogy, but in the same field, lemons to lemonade, decided, well, we're going to go back to classic Coke. And they sold more. Conspiracy is almost like you thought they did it on purpose. So they tried something new. It was a terrible flop. They had enough money in their budgets to retool, rebrand, go out with classic Coke. We were all so happy we bought more of it. Well, any of our systems, if we try some technology on the treatment side or the pumping side, our New Coke, and it doesn't work, we're hauled in front of a council or a mayor or the public. We might lose our jobs. We'll probably be sued. Public health might be at risk. And so now we tried this new thing and it didn't work. Coke had the money to do classic Coke. Do we have the money to rebuy something else? Redo something else? You buy something new, where's the training going to come from to train your people to do that new thing? There is a reason to stick with what you know works when you have a tight budget and you can't be wrong. Because entrepreneurialism, by its definition, means trying lots of new things, many of which don't work. We can't not work. Quite the opposite. But that's the fist. How do you get away from this fist of an essential service? Terrible shape. Talking about DC, but not shape probably any of us would want. Old systems. Customers that don't know us. Financially, not enough revenue. In a situation where we tend to do what we know. Boom. That was the fist. Well, the good news, and the reason why I'm really pleased to be here today, is that since then, since 2009, I had the most extraordinary experience working in this industry with people just like you. The most incredible 8 years of my life. Incredible privilege. And I would say that what we did is what I call the hand up over the fist. So what's the hand? Because I think the hand is also something that may be relevant to water professionals anywhere in the world perhaps, but certainly here in the country. What's my hand? 5 points again. First, we've got the best product ever. It's the same point as the first point on the fist. There is nobody else that gets to deliver a product that supports every single job and every single life form in the communities in which we serve. Nobody else. Powers, sure, it's important. Cable, television, telephones, I don't care what else. All important. None of them can say that. There is nobody that does the scale and importance to all living beings and our civilization than we do. People don't have power. It's a problem. It's a challenge. They know what to do for a while anyways. Someone doesn't have water? It goes immediately to the top of their crisis list because they realize their very life is at risk if they don't have water. Businesses are at risk. Agriculture, our food is at risk. If there's too much of it on the other end, it can cause us great. You all know that better than anyone in the world, perhaps, certainly in the United States, the challenges that comes from that end of the spectrum. It's unbelievable, the service that we deliver. That's, I consider, a privilege and a wonderful field to be in. I get up early, go late, and wouldn't stop because I loved this subject. 2, turns out we found it wasn't hard to make a relationship with our customers as long as we paid attention to it. Now, this is a message that is unusual to some utility folks in the water field, actually in many utilities. I thought of our customers as customers. And people say, well, you know, Mr. Hawkins, you have a monopoly. That's true. Can't send your wastewater anywhere else but us in D.C. But I don't have a monopoly. Every one of my customers has a decision to make as to whether they support us or not. Are they going to go to their council member or their ward council member and campaign against our rates? Are they going to come to hearings? Or are they going to enter the marketplace that we are in is tougher than a business marketplace? You got a good product and a good service in a business marketplace, you can succeed. You've got a great product and a great service in a political marketplace, and you can still get stomped on unless you're playing in that game and play it well. So my view is every one of our customer is a customer with a choice. Not a choice of where they send their wastewater, but a choice of whether they support us or not. So when that rate increase comes out that we propose to pay for all the things we got to pay for, are they going to back us or not? There's no reason for them to back us unless they know who we are. Unless they have a feeling of who we are as people. We're great people. You all are public servants. You are doing such God's work every day. My experience when I talk to people in the water industry is they're really super human beings. Well, let's connect with folks. Show them who we are. We're their neighbors. We're just like them. We're doing something that matters to them. And this project we want to do that we want you to fund is more important to you and your family than any other dollar you'll spend. But to make that case, I have to have a connection with them. There's got to be a venue in which I can have an interaction with the customer. So the first thing we did was rebrand. I didn't want a logo that looked like I worked for the Department of Corrections, for God's sake. But you know how we did the rebranding? Everyone worries about cost. We just did a contest. We opened it up to everybody in the city. Free marketing. It was hilarious. We got logo proposals with turds and toilets and fire hydrants and just all sorts of fun stuff. But here's what we came up with. Right here on my shirt. DC and a water drop. Our tagline, I do take credit for the tagline. I don't know if you can read that. Oh, it's on my side here. Water is life. 3 words. We changed the colors. Use small face to make it not look official. We want to be a customer-oriented, calm, this is, so the typeface we thought about. Our trucks are white. We picked colors because we're an environmental organization. My view is not only are we an environmental organization, and in D.C., every environmental organization knows to humankind has got an office in D.C. We're more important than all of them. We do more for water than any other enterprise by far in Washington, D.C. We are an environmental organization. We are protecting every waterway. We're cleaning the water on the front end. We're cleaning it on the back end. Every part of the ecosystem that relies on what we do. We do it more than the watershed groups. I've run those too. We are the environmental professionals. So we wanted to have colors that adopted and engaged us and said, we are not just a sewer company. That's what people used to think. Yes, we do run those things. We're an environmental organization protecting everything you care about in your daily life 24 hours a day. That's the colors we've got. White truck, DC in a water drop, water's life, jumps out at you. We get calls all the time. Oh, I see your truck here, I see your truck there. Our trucks were always out there. People just didn't know it was us. Why would they write out a check if they don't see work happening for the check? Now they see us all over the city. DC Water Drop is one of the best known logos in the water world internationally because it's simple. DC and a water drop. I bet you're in DC, Washington, and I bet you're a water company. Bingo! Water is life. We have staked the claim that what we do is important to everything. So we did this, cost almost no money because it was this all 178 entries that we got, put it together in-house. And then we changed all of our logos over time. We didn't want to spend a lot of money, so every time a truck came in for maintenance that they were going to be there anyways, we stuck on a new decal. It just wasn't that expensive. But that started us in this whole world of communication, which started small and has grown big. DC Water's Twitter account was just voted the best Twitter account for a government agency in Washington, D.C. It's got tens of thousands of followers. Our social media, we're everywhere. We do water taste tests. Metro Stop, you come up, we'll test our water versus bottled water with a whole campaign for how much more bottled water costs and ours tastes better as well or better. And that's what most people say in a blind taste test. And we publicize all that. We want to be everywhere all the time. People seeing us, hearing us. And by the way, when there is a problem, we admit it out front in the news and try to always turn into it. Where's the water main break? Do you know that that water main on New Hampshire Avenue, that one for Snowpocalypse, was put in the ground in 1912? That's why it's breaking. That's why we're coming to you for more money in our bill so we can replace those pipes. I am very sorry that my predecessors didn't do that. The bill has come due. This is our time. But that's what we're fixing. So every story about something wrong, we turn into a case statement for why we are and how we're going to fix it. So the whole communication side has just been incredibly fun. We get a lot of it, by the way, has all sorts of ancillary benefits. The more we've communicated, the more communication we get back. Our performance gets better. If any one of our trucks, someone calls, seen a DC water truck parked outside the Clyde's restaurant for the last 2.5 hours. Well, that's interesting to know. They might be working. But all of our team is very efficient now because everybody's watching us. They know who we are. That raises our game. The more you communicate, you tweet us, I want to roll a truck in a half hour. You tweet DC Water with a problem, we roll truck. People get used to that. They're like, yeah, I'm getting service for my money. I see them out there. I called, I see the truck within 30 minutes. Wow, that is cool. Then you start getting this positive response from your customers. Third, on finances. An average single-family bill in DC per month in 2009 when I started was $42. All in. Water, wastewater. We don't call it wastewater, by the way. We call it enriched water. I'll come back to that. And stormwater. It's all in one bill. No subsidies, full cost accounting, one bill. This year, 110. I've gotten every rate increase proposed, accepted in full over the last 8 years. Hasn't been easy, but we've made the value proposition to our customer every day. My goal is when I go to a customer and say, hey, we need $5 more. They say, Mr. Hawkins, how about 10? Never happened, by the way. But that's my goal. Someone knows enough about what we're doing, they should want to invest in it. This is not some distant thing or some extra TV show they can watch or a movie. No, this is the water that you are going to use to cook your food in. And after we clean it and goes back, that's going to be in the stream behind your house or going into the lake down the street. This is the livelihoods of everybody you know, and you're investing in it in something that's going to deliver that service tomorrow, the next day, next year, 20 years from now. Incredible what this service is, and you need to invest in it. And here's why, and here's what. Let's come see it. We take reporters and tours of all of our big projects, and they're fascinated. They're visual. They're interesting. But it has enabled us to financially do what we need to do, including spending $650 million in capital in 1 year, a year ago. We've been able to fund that. The next is in it creativity and innovation. Remember how I said in our industry we're conservative on that front for reasons that are understandable. That does not mean that you all aren't creative. In fact, my experience has been completely the opposite. The lesson that people were learning that in our industry we tend to do with what we know because we have limited budgets, we can never be wrong. They were thinking, oh, that means that water professionals aren't creative. Wrong. Totally the opposite. I looked at that water main break. I keep trying to tell people, when we do our work on a daily basis, it's like your auto mechanic trying to repair a car that has pieces on it from a Model T and a Tesla, and every model in between. Because when you open up the street, we might have a pipe there from 2005. You might have valves from 1900. You might have pieces. And the system has been built over 200 years, 150 years in DC's case. But it's all this polyglot of being put together, different people, different times, different buildings. They go up, they put in their system. It's all. And then we're fixing that on the fly with people watching through the window, wondering when it's going to be back. So we don't have lots of extra time to get this all done. So we are always being creative within tight budgets and limited. Now, we don't have lots of money to go buy this, that, and the other. We got to make this work within a tight budget in a short time frame with everybody watching. You know what that takes? Creativity. Tons of it. Daily. Creativity is in your DNA. You couldn't do your job without it. In fact, you're so used to it, you probably don't even think of it. Folks in this industry are using creativity to solve the problems you have with limited budgets and everybody watching with incredible pressure all the time. So creativity wasn't the problem. It was a system where of limited budgets and needing to always be on that made it hard to try new things. So that was the challenge that at DC Water I think we figured out. Because what I said to my team is, I want to know any new idea. Any of them. I don't care. I'm a lawyer. By the way, this is one of the more humorous parts of being in my job is that almost anybody at DC Water, I also don't have a very good memory. If they come and ask me something and want a decision and they didn't like the decision that I gave, they would just wait a few days, come back and ask again. I would totally forget that we'd met before, and they would just change the point of view a little bit to see, we knew what he said the last time, what if we try it this way? But the other thing is I never really knew the technical stuff. People were always pitching new ideas to me. And I'd take them back to our technical folks, and I'd never forget one of our young engineers would come to me and say, Mr. Hawkins, I'm sorry to tell you, but that idea violates the first law of thermodynamics. I'm like, well, that's good. What is the first law of thermodynamics? But I'm not the person to know which of these technologies are right or wrong. I need to hire the people who know and create a system in which those ideas can come forth. Ideas on anything. We have a video at DC Water for our innovations program, and it has no words. It's a video of one of our oldest employees. In fact, since we made the video, he retired after 47 years or something. And it turns out the sewer pick, at least on the East Coast, I hear this is fairly common. It's about this long. You know, the sewer manhole has a notch on either end. You put the sewer pick in. Because it's so short, you've got to stand next to the manhole and pull it up. If you wanted to design a sewer pick to injure somebody's back, that's what you would design. An asymmetrical, this is what the medical people tell me, an asymmetrical weight to the side that's heavy and you're yanking. So this guy said, well, why is the sewer pick so short? He designed a full-length sewer pick that had a crook in the handle like you see with some of those snow shovels. And he went into our machine shop and he made it. We now have a patent pending for it. And that is the video we used for innovations at DC Water. Is innovation software? Sure. Is it sensors? Yes. Is it new treatment technology? Yes. But I don't care if you order paper, or you fill out permits, or you answer the phone, all of which are important. I don't care what you do. I mean, I do care what you do. But I don't care what you do in this context. If you got a better way, you know your job better than anybody else, better than your supervisor, better than anyone else. You know your job. And while you're sitting there, how many times during the day, God, if we did it this way instead of that way, this would be faster. I bet everyone in this room's had that experience 50 times over. Good organizations figure out how to capture those ideas, and when the time is right, put them in place. People love it when they have a chance to come to a job and not just do things that they're told, but be engaged in how it's done. Then it becomes part of them. I am now reflected in this work because we do it this way instead of that way because of my idea. By the way, I got another one. Or I want to support my workmate over here who's got one too. You start this positive upswing of all these ideas. We have too many ideas coming to us now, which is a great problem to have, and we have to pick the ones we want to do. from the biggest scale to the smallest scale. We've created a whole pilot facility over time. This didn't happen overnight. But we've built little tiny versions of our treatment plant. So we can monkey around with the treatment process without risking anybody. And in fact, we've helped patent and invent 3 new ways to do various elements of treatment that save chemicals, that save time, that save electricity. We're building the largest Demon Animox facility on Earth for side stream at Blue Plains, coming from our research office. We had at DC Water, Blue Plains is gigantic. It is a 300 million gallon per day flow plant, billion gallon at peak. Tertiary treatment. If you haven't been there when you come to DC, come visit. You all will love it. It's gigantic. It's just huge. But to give you a sense of how big it is, of course, we're pulling all that crud out of the water before it goes into the Potomac. 1,200 tons a day, biosolids. Tanker truck, about the length here, 60 tanker trucks a day. That's why we call it enriched water. Our team said, I kept saying, what's in that stuff? Other than it smells to high heaven, what's in it? And they're like, well, there's nutrients in it, there's BTUs in it. I'm like, well, how would we turn that into power? There's other places that do digestion. Like, well, we can't do digestion here because the little bugs that eat the biosolids that generate the methane that you generate for power take 20 days, so they tell me, to do their bug work. Well, if you've got 1,200 tons of throughput every single day, we know the volume of digesters we have to build, and we don't have enough space. We are a constrained site. Almost every urban site is constrained like that. So our research, I said, well, fix that. I don't care where you go. Go worldwide. Look whatever you can. We found an idea that was being used in Northern Europe called thermal hydrolysis. For a variety of treatment, you prepare the material that goes into these it's pressure cookers. They look like pressure cookers. Pressure cookers tenderize meat. The heat causes the connections to loosen, they tell me. Well, that's what happens in these pressure cookers. They cook the biosolids at very high temperature and pressure that burns off volume. It sterilizes it. I'll come back to that. But then it comes out to a flash tank. The pressure and the heat is released and the cell walls burst. So the volume is less, the cell walls are burst, they go into the digester, and the bugs are like, yes, the food is all there. I don't have to get through all the cell membrane to get into the food. They make more methane, they make it faster. And all of a sudden, we could fit it on the site. More energy, more efficiency, on site, generating 13 megawatts, 24-hour a day, as they say in the power world, baseload power. $500 million. Discretionary. Having heard the value to it, our board supported it. We raised the money. It's built in operation today. The first such facility of its kind in North America, largest in the world, researched by our team. The last piece of that is that the biosolids that come out at the other end are sterilized, still have nutrients. We're selling it. Bloomsoil.com. Take a look sometime. We have 450 tons of it a day. It's a wonderful soil amendment. So that's why we call it enriched water. It's a value to us. We're doing that, DC Water is doing that on almost everything now. We're using sensors and sonar, and we have these sensors that you put on the manholes that can tell the pressure inside. So if there's little spikes that will tell you that there's a pressure problem, and hopefully you catch the water main break before it happens and fix it during regular hours, not overtime. All sorts of things before you can tell the customers the water's going to be out rather than it being an emergency. There's so many things that are going on that's amazing. We're building a new headquarters at DC Water. Heating and cooling. By the way, it's sitting over a pump station. So we cantilevered the building over a pump station, didn't have to buy any land, we're already there. You go up an escalator to get to the offices above the pump station, knocking down part of the wall. So everybody coming in to our headquarters is going to look into a working pump station. Get a sense of what we do. Oh, it's cool. We have reporters going down and seeing, like, going down our big tunnels. They're 23 feet in diameter. They go down there like, oh my God, I had no idea. Bingo! Of course you had no idea, but now you do. Write about it. Take pictures. Show our customers what they're paying for, what the scale of this is. We've got 1,800 miles of pipes in D.C. on the sewer side. That's from here to Washington, D.C. to Albuquerque. People need to know that. But now we're innovating on everything. We've got a relationship with our customer, and we talk to them all the time, doing things never thought we could do. So I did step down at the end of December. Very tough decision, I have to say. I love the people at DC Water. Team Blue is what I call them on my shirt. But I started a little company called Moonshot. And I'll tell you why. As I've gone around the country, and I've done a fair amount of speaking to folks like you, I just love water people. And I admire you. I talk about it all the time, but I don't dig holes, turn pipes, design things, or any of that. That's what you all do, and I'm astonished by it. I want to tell the story, not just to us, but to other audiences. They need to hear about what we do. But if you'd have asked me in 2009, when I saw that fist, that we were going to be able to do this, I would have said, that's a moonshot. In fact, truth be told, when the mayor first encouraged me to apply, DC Water's independent, so the mayor could not appoint me in it. At the time, I was in a mayoral appointed position. So he was asking me to leave the protective world of the mayor and go into this independent agency. My first reaction was no. DC WASA, I didn't like them. Nobody did. But I became convinced, just thinking about it, of what the opportunity was, even if it was a moonshot, to do when you are responsible for a life-giving resource that supports every job. And when I've talked to so many people in our industry, in your industry, as I've gone around the country and even around the world, I always hear people who are interested in doing these things. And the limitation is not intelligence, capacity, creativity, leadership, all of those things. It's usually scale. One of the reasons DC Water was able to do this is we had a $500 million operating budget. And yes, I had to make a case to our customers, but once I did, we had enough scale to be able to build that kind of capacity. So the question that's on my mind, which in the last 3 weeks I haven't figured out yet, but that's what Moonshot is, I hope to help, is how to help smaller, particularly public entities, do the kinds of things we did at DC Water. You want to communicate with your customers better to create a relationship so that you can generate the revenue you need to try the technology you've always had on your mind or the things you've always thought you'd like to do but haven't been able to. That's your moonshot. Every one of you got a moonshot, I bet. We all have hopes and dreams. By hook or by crook, and it wasn't easy, good God Almighty, and we made plenty of mistakes. But there's no reason to start from scratch. Had a lot of experience. I've done more than 3,000 public meetings, not just in the last 8 years, but in my career. It's actually climbing near 4,000. So I've done a lot of that part of it. But how to recruit the right people? What are the kinds of ideas that work? There's tons of water tech firms out there. Which are some of the ones that might be relevant to you? My goal in starting Moonshot was maybe to provide that kind of help. That's a very soft sell. I'm not expecting business from here, but if you're curious. By the way, my Twitter account is for those of you who tweet, at George Hawkins DC, friend me. I will friend you back. I guess that's what you do on Twitter.Ghawk, G-H-A-W-K, moonshot at outlook.com is my email. I'm always interested to hear from all you wonderful people in the water world. But I've got a few minutes left, so I'm going to see if any of you have any questions, or did I use up all the air in the room? 10 minutes. But I just want to tell you that it is incredible that's what's possible. People out there are instinctively interested in water, in all ways, good and not so good. Water is the most important things in their lives to making sure they're alive, safe, and healthy, and it can be devastating on the other end. We had terrible flooding problems in D.C., still do. We're spending billions of dollars in D.C. solving flooding problems. And I know you here in Texas have suffered in my understanding, I've never heard of 50 inches of rain falling in a short period of time, ever. That's biblical. That's Noah's Ark territory. We in D.C. flood when we get an inch of rain in a half hour. It's not the total amount, although that matters. It's the speed, velocity at which it comes. And you had both. So you've lived with challenges that are extraordinary. And I have to say, from what I've read, you stood tall. That does not surprise me. We are at our best when the challenges are at their greatest. I always tell folks that when I was at DC Water, my worst day was a good day. Because we had something bad going on. I'd call our team together. We had a little war room. And just to see everybody drop everything else, come together as a group and start solving problems. That's what you all are like. Problem, your eyes start to spin around. That's what you all are good at. Stepping up 24 hours a day, solving problems for issues that matter to people when they realize it more than anything else. So if there's anything as the days go on in any fashion that I can be of service, I love what you do. I believe that you work on the side of angels. And believe me, for the last 12 years, actually, because I was on the board of DC Water before I joined it as chief executive, I have been privileged beyond belief to be at your side. So I thank you very, very much for your attention this morning. God bless you.
Thank you. I believe that we have some standing microphones. If you have a few questions, George has just a few minutes when he has to depart, catch that international flight, and also upon completion of the questions and so forth, if you'd please help the hotel staff to reset this room for our luncheon by taking conversations and so forth out into the coffee area, it'd be greatly appreciated. Anybody?
Mr. Hawkins, I'm in the oil and gas pipeline business, and our main emphasis is replacing existing infrastructure due to corrosive, and the most corrosive product that we deal with every day is water. Can you relate to us how you implemented a program to replace the existing infrastructure in Washington?
Yes, very good question. And we do have I didn't get into all of our financial innovations, which are also fascinating. DC Water did the first century bond in the United States, which is a 100-year maturity bond. We did the first environmental impact bond. We did small denomination bonds so we could sell directly to our customers. Most buyers are institutional investors. We created a rate structure that has variable funding and fixed funding. For water system infrastructure replacement, we created a fixed fee. Because if all of us know that when you generate revenue by volume, as people conserve more, you get less revenue. But a lot of your costs are fixed, regardless of how much people use. So we created a water system replacement fee, that's what it's called, the WSRF, that was based on the size of connection that a customer would have. And that money was guaranteed to be used to replace $40 million, or 1%, of our water infrastructure in the district in perpetuity. And we spent a year and a half presenting the compelling value proposition for that investment, including every water main break where we would say, yes, there's a water main break, you're out of service, here's what we're doing. By the way, if I drive up now to a water main break, we have all of our trucks have all of the valves and systems computerized on a computer in the truck that are real time, so no longer those old sheets. All of those customers are communicated by social media in every fashion you could possibly. We use sensors to go out to figure out where the breaks and the problems are. So the whole way we respond is completely changed. But every time we tell the story of how the water system replacement fee and where is permanently replacing infrastructure, and we got support from our ratepayers for that additional fixed charge. So it does not go up or down depending on how much water people use. We can guarantee that every year, year after year after year, it's 1%. Now 1% may not sound like a lot, but when I started, we were at 1/3 of 1%. replacement. The average in the United States is half of 1%, and we're now at 1%. And then it depends on being really smart by using, again, analytical tools. If you have 1% of your money, where can you spend it most smartly to get the most bang for your buck? And so we chart where all the water main breaks are, where the problems are, so we make sure that we're repairing the places that have the most value to the customer first. But we made the value proposition to our customer. It is a fixed fee based on connection size, and it guarantees infrastructure replacement every year from now in perpetuity. One last thing I'll say on that, and all of this is in our industry, we're all worried about getting new talent coming in, because I think it's very good that we keep people who work in the water world know why it matters, so they tend to stay. That's great. But we need young folks coming in. And these innovations in social media, we are getting such good talent coming into DC Water because they hear about it and they want to be part of it. So a parallel benefit to all the communication and the outreach that I hadn't thought of when we started was how important it is to recruiting new people, that they know who you are and why it matters and you're doing some cool things. And they're like, I want to do that. And in our new headquarters at DC, over the pump station, the heating and cooling from the building is being done by sewer thermal, not geothermal, sewer thermal. That was an idea that was brought to us by a 27-year-old engineer we had just hired. So one of the things I say to each of our employees, I always greeted all the new employees when they were hired in person. And I always say, I hope you have some good ideas and be careful, because if you have one, we just might do it. But the answer to the question is we have a fixed fee based on meter connection size that permanently funds water infrastructure replacement on an annual basis from here to perpetuity. So thanks so much.
We have a very short time for perhaps one more question. Somebody, sir?
Yes, sir. It was very good presentation. I would request if you repeat those 5 points in the first very simple numbers or names, and also the name of the thermo process which is used for consolidation of the waste and producing the electricity. Thank you. My name is Amarjeet Verma. I'm from Houston on a flood control district. Thanks.
Thank you kindly. Yep. Oh, the 5 points. The thermal hydrolysis is the system that we use. The particular technology is called CAMBI, C-A-M-B-I. That's the thermal hydrolysis, but then we have a power plant now at DC Water generating power 24 hours a day, all of which we use ourselves, that cuts our permanent power bill. This is a cash flow positive project despite $470 million that we went to bond markets for. The 5 points on the fist: one is the importance of the service. Second is the terrible condition that it's in. Third is that our customers don't know us. Fourth is that financially we did not have the revenue or financial systems in place to solve the problems. And fifth, we weren't known as being creative, which would be the way you'd solve any of the prior issues. So that was the fist. Again, it's been a delight to be in Texas. I love your state. Thanks so much.